February 16th, 2026, 11:23 local time. The Gulf of Oman. The USS Philippine Sea is hunting. The Ticonderoga-class cruiser has been tracking an Iranian Kilo-class submarine for 72 hours. The submarine, hull number 901, NATO designation Tarek, has been operating aggressively, approaching within 15 nautical miles of commercial shipping lanes. The Philippine Sea's mission is shadow and report. Follow the submarine. Document its behavior. Maintain contact without escalating. At 11:23, the Iranians escalate first. A Nasser-1 anti-ship cruise missile, launched not from the submarine, but from a shore battery 60 kilometers away, strikes the Philippine Sea's portside amidships. I'm your host at U.S. Defense Review, where we analyze the military operations that define global security. The February 9th attack introduced a new Iranian tactic, using submarine operations as bait to position American ships for shore-based missile ambushes. The Tarek wasn't the threat. The Tarek was the lure. What happened in the 54 minutes following the impact would demonstrate that American forces had adapted to Iranian tactical innovation, and that adaptation came with overwhelming firepower. Let's understand the trap. The Kilo-class submarine is one of the quietest diesel-electric boats ever built. When running on batteries, it produces almost no acoustic signature. Finding one requires patience, skill, and specialized equipment. The USS Philippine Sea had all three. Her SH-60R Seahawk helicopter had been dropping sonobuoys around the suspected submarine position for days. Her hull-mounted sonar had prosecuted contacts whenever the submarine surfaced to snorkel. Her crew had built a pattern of life, understanding when the Tarek moved, how it moved, where it was likely to go. By February 9th, the Philippine Sea's tracking was precise. The Tarek was 12 nautical miles north-northeast, running at 4 knots, likely preparing to snorkel. Captain William Harrison was focused on the submarine. His entire command team was focused on the submarine. Their situational awareness was tunneled on an underwater contact. They weren't watching the coast. The Iranians were watching them. For 6 days, Iranian intelligence had tracked the Philippine Sea's pursuit of the Tarek. They knew the cruiser's position. They knew her course. They knew she was distracted. At 11:19, a Nasser-1 anti-ship missile launched from a concealed position on the Makran coast. The Nasser-1 is a small cruise missile, only 350 kilograms total weight, with a 130 kilogram warhead. Its range is limited to approximately 35 kilometers. Its guidance is basic: inertial navigation with an active radar seeker for terminal homing. But it's also fast. Mach 0.95. Sea skimming. Difficult to detect until it's close. The Philippine Sea was operating 31 kilometers from the launch point, just within range. The ship's AN/SPY-1B radar detected the missile at 11:21:14. The contact appeared suddenly. One moment nothing. The next moment a threat inbound at high subsonic speed. Time to impact: approximately 72 seconds. The Combat Information Center erupted into activity. Alarms sounded. The Tactical Action Officer authorized weapons release. SM-2 missiles began launching. But 72 seconds wasn't enough time to guarantee an intercept. The first SM-2 launched at 11:21:23. It reached the Nasser-1's projected intercept point at 11:22:04. The Nasser-1 wasn't there. The missile had executed a pre-programmed terminal maneuver, a slight jink that threw off the SM-2's engagement solution by just enough. The interceptor's proximity fuse detonated, but the Nasser-1 was outside the lethal radius. The second SM-2 launched at 11:21:26. It adjusted for the target's maneuver. It closed the distance. It should have hit. A fragment from the first SM-2's detonation struck the second SM-2's seeker head at 11:22:07. Blue-on-blue interference. The kind of thing that happens in combat, that doesn't happen in simulations, that nobody plans for. The second interceptor went ballistic, its guidance destroyed. It splashed harmlessly 2 kilometers from the cruiser. Time to impact: 16 seconds. The Phalanx CIWS engaged. The 20-millimeter rounds reached toward the incoming missile. Some rounds connected. The Nasser 1 wobbled, lost some speed. Not enough. At 11:23:11, the Nasser 1 struck the USS Philippine Sea. The impact point was the port side hull, between the forward and aft superstructure. The 130-kilogram warhead detonated on contact. The explosion blew a hole 8 meters wide in the cruiser's side. The blast wave traveled through interior compartments, killing 5 sailors instantly and wounding 23 more. Petty Officer First Class James Chin, 34. Petty Officer Second Class David Williams, 28. Petty Officer Third Class Sarah Thompson, 25. Seaman Michael Park, 22. Seaman Apprentice Robert Jackson, Divdesmit, 5 dead before noon on a Tuesday. 5 families that would receive notification before dinner. The ship was badly hurt. The blast had ruptured fuel lines, starting fires in adjacent compartments. It had buckled structural members, threatening the integrity of the hull. It had severed power cables, leaving portions of the ship in darkness. But the Philippine Sea was a 9,600-ton cruiser, nearly 50% larger than the destroyers that had been hit in previous engagements. She had more compartmentalization, more redundancy, more capacity to absorb damage. She was wounded. She wasn't dying. Captain Harrison reached the CIC at 11:25. He'd been on the bridge when the missile hit, watching the submarine's estimated position, not realizing his ship was under attack until the impact threw him against the navigation console. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. He ignored it. "Status report 1, he demanded. The answers came fast. 5 confirmed dead, 23 wounded, 6 critically. Fire in 3 compartments. Flooding in 2. Propulsion reduced, but functional. Weapons systems, most importantly, intact. The Philippine Sea could still fight. And she would. At 11:27, Captain Harrison made a decision that would be studied and debated for years. The submarine was still there. The Tarik was still running at 4 knots, 12 nautical miles away. The Iranians had used it as bait, but the bait was still in the water. Harrison had standing authority to prosecute hostile submarines under the rules of engagement that had evolved through months of confrontation. The submarine hadn't fired the missile, but it was part of the coordinated attack. It was a legitimate target. He ordered weapons release. At 11:29, the Philippine Sea's SH-60R helicopter, already airborne, already prosecuting the contact, received orders to attack. The Seahawk carried 2 Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes. It had been tracking the Tarik for hours. The fire control solution was solid. At 11:32, the first torpedo dropped. The Mark 54 entered the water 600 meters from the submarine's estimated position. Its acoustic seeker activated. It began searching. The Tarik heard it coming. The submarine's captain, later identified as Captain Hassan Rezaieh, a 20-year veteran of the Iranian Navy, ordered emergency procedures. Countermeasures deployed. The submarine dove, trying to use thermal layers in the water to mask its signature. But the Mark 54 is a smart weapon. Its seeker can distinguish between countermeasures and actual submarines. Its pursuit logic can follow targets through evasive maneuvers. At 11:35, the torpedo acquired the Tarik. At 11:36, it detonated against the submarine's hull. The Mk-54 carries a 44-kilogram warhead, small by torpedo standards. It's designed to damage and disable, not necessarily destroy. Against a surfaced ship, it might cause serious flooding. Against a submerged submarine, the effects depend on where it hits. It hit the Tarik's engine compartment. The explosion ruptured the pressure hull. Seawater rushed in. The submarine's propulsion failed immediately. She began sinking toward the bottom. Captain Rezai ordered emergency blow, an attempt to surface using compressed air to force water from the ballast tanks. The maneuver partially succeeded. The Tarik broke the surface at 11:38, her stern already underwater, her bow rising at an unnatural angle. Survivors began abandoning ship. The Seahawk helicopter circled, watching. Under international law, the crew could not fire on survivors in the water. The engagement was over. 31 Iranian sailors were rescued over the following hours. 23 were confirmed dead. The Tariq settled to the bottom in 340 meters of water, too deep to recover, too shallow to be forgotten. But the submarine was only part of Harrison's response. At 11:31, while the torpedo was still hunting, the captain had transmitted to Fifth Fleet. Philippine Sea hit by Nasser 1 from Makran coast. 5 KIA, 23 wounded, have prosecuted Iranian submarine in coordinated action. Submarine hit. Request strike authorization for launch site. Vice Admiral Santos received the report at 11:34. She faced a complex situation. The Philippine Sea had already sunk an Iranian submarine, the first submarine lost in combat since World War II. That was a major escalation, regardless of the circumstances. Adding a strike on the mainland would compound the escalation. But the Iranians had started this. They had used the submarine as bait. They had fired first. 5 American sailors were dead. The logic of deterrence demanded response. If attacks went unanswered, they would continue. If submarines could be used to lure American ships into ambushes, they would be. At 11:42, Santos authorized a strike. The target package was focused. The Nasser 1 battery that had attacked the Philippine Sea, coordinates determined by trajectory analysis, a coastal radar station that had likely provided targeting data, and a small IRGC naval facility that intelligence assessed had coordinated the operation. 3 targets, proportional but meaningful. The assets moved. The guided missile destroyer, USS Chung Hoon, launched 8 Tomahawks at 11:47. The destroyer USS Mustin added 4 more at 11:49. 12 missiles, 3 targets. At 12:17, 54 minutes after the Philippine Sea was hit, the first Tomahawk struck. The Nasser 1 battery was destroyed first. The launcher vehicles, the radar unit, the command vehicle, the crew, all eliminated in a 15-second window of precision destruction. The coastal radar station was next. 2 Tomahawks struck the antenna arrays and equipment buildings. The facility that had watched the Philippine Sea, that had provided the targeting data that guided the missile that killed 5 Americans, ceased to exist. The IRGC facility received 4 missiles. Post-strike analysis confirmed. This was the command center that had coordinated the trap. The officers who had planned the operation, who had positioned the submarine, who had ordered the missile launch, were inside. They weren't inside anymore. At 12:23, the strike was complete. The full scope of the February 9th engagement. American losses: 5 sailors killed, 23 wounded, 1 cruiser damaged, requiring 4 months of repair. Iranian losses: 1 Kilo-class submarine sunk with 23 crew dead, 3 shore facilities destroyed with estimated 60 to 80 personnel killed. Coastal defense capability in the Makran sector eliminated. The exchange was devastating. For Iran, the diplomatic response was unprecedented in its intensity. Iran demanded an emergency UN Security Council session. They accused the United States of piracy and murder for sinking the Tariq. They released footage of survivors being rescued, emphasizing their humanity. The United States released evidence of the coordinated attack. Radar tracks showing the Nasser 1 launch. Communications intercepts demonstrating the submarine was part of the operation. Damage photos from the Philippine Sea. Russia vetoed any resolution critical of Iran. China abstained. The session ended without action. But the military implications were clear. Iran had tried to innovate, using submarines as bait, creating ambushes that exploited American tactical focus. The tactic had worked once. It had achieved a hit. It had killed Americans. It had also cost Iran a submarine, 3 facilities, and over 100 personnel. The Kilo-class boats are among Iran's most valuable naval assets. They take years to build and decades to train crews for. Losing one in a tactical ambush that killed 5 Americans and damaged 1 ship, the math didn't work. The submarine as bait tactic was not repeated. The USS Philippine Sea returned to service after 4 months in dry dock. Her repairs included upgraded close-in defenses, additional sensors specifically designed to detect small, fast-moving missiles from unexpected angles. The 5 sailors who died were buried with full military honors. Their names joined the growing list of Americans killed in the Gulf confrontation. A war that had no name, no declaration, no clear objective, but very real casualties. The wreckage of the Tarik lies on the bottom of the Gulf of Oman. The bodies of 23 Iranian sailors remain inside. Neither navy has attempted to recover the hull. Some monuments aren't built. They're left where they fall. The February 9th engagement demonstrated something that neither side had fully appreciated before. American response doctrine didn't just target the weapons that attacked. It targeted the entire operation. The submarines, the shore batteries, the command centers, the planners. Attack with a coordinated operation, and the entire operation gets destroyed. 54 minutes. That's how long it took to go from a missile impact to the complete elimination of the attack infrastructure. That speed, that comprehensiveness, is why American ships still sail the Gulf, and why Iranian captains think carefully before giving the order to fire. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.